Okay, hold on. Oh, okay, it's good friend of the show, Emily Volpentesta, who all the Progressive Soup viewers, particularly Roberto, know Emily Volpentesta, a wonderful licensed massage therapist, good friend of the show.
She's a wonderful, beautiful girl.
And she's cute too, isn't she? And she's calling up. She says enough of the embellishment. So she's got a question for us. She says, now in Ohio, okay, I got you. Okay, in Ohio in 2004, she said that John Kerry, and for some reason she's calling him an oak tree mother. Oh, okay, that's because she saw the movie, the interview, about the interview with the North Korean president. Okay, where they refer to John Kerry, Secretary of State John Kerry, as that oak tree mother.
Bleep. Horse.
Bleep. It looks like a horse a little bit too, you're right.
Why the long face,
she said,
Mr. Nut?
In 2004 in Ohio, she wants us to note that in 2004 in Ohio, John Kerry swore that he would, if there was any shenanigans in Ohio, any shenanigans going on in Ohio in the presidential election in 2004, and there were, clearly, because there was one precinct in Cuyahoga County where 600 people voted, 638 voted, and the vote broke down this way: 240 votes for presidential candidate John Kerry, and there were 6,312 votes. And mind you, this is out of 638 people that actually voted. 6,312 votes for presidential candidate George Bush. So Kerry clearly had, I'm quoting you. Kerry clearly had good reason to want a recount in Ohio. And any presidential candidate, in fact, any person, if they pay the money, they can demand and finance from donations or out of their own pocket a recount of. In Ohio, they can do, there's a random percentage that have to be recounted. It has to be random, and it has to be random precincts, and it has to be, I think, 10% that they have to recount. Well, John Kerry also promised he'd have an army, literally an army of attorneys on the ground if there were any shenanigans in Ohio in 2004. Well, the election happened. George Bush won Ohio, partly with the little tweak shenanigans in Cuyahoga County and maybe elsewhere. And Kerry, after the election, said, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I won't. So Green Party candidate, and this is just like 2016, the Green Party candidate, David Cobb, gathered donations and recounted the vote in Ohio, the random vote. Only problem was the Secretary of State in Ohio, Ken Blackwell, who was black, by the way, interestingly enough, interesting side note. Ken Blackwell, Secretary of State in Ohio, didn't randomly choose precincts. He decided which precincts he wanted to recount. And last and alack, Cuyahoga County wasn't included in that list. And the vote was not altered and George Bush was reelected. So, thanks, Emily. Okay. Remember, we got you on the show pretty soon. Roberto and I are both looking forward to having you come back. Anxiously awaiting you to come and join us again. Welcome to Progressive Soup. We're going to continue our discussion from last night. Gentlemen, pick up where we left off.
Well, I asked the question that has really befuddled me with the election process. Why do we as a nation not have one system for all states to vote? The same system in Alaska as Connecticut, as Massachusetts, Florida, why do the states have that power to determine what system they use?
And I'm going to go back and I'm going to put a plug in again for Connecticut Election Protection, Luther Weeks, who's in charge under the Secretary of State's office to randomly recount one election in 5% of precincts in Connecticut that are actually randomly selected, and with paper ballots, with votes under lock and key inside a locked bag inside a locked cabinet, brought out under the eye of the observers, brought out by both the Republican and Democratic registrar of voters for that precinct, for that town.
You can hand that.
They're brought out and unzipped under everyone's watchful gaze.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. Okay, in Connecticut, we asked, and Michael Fager, our director, graciously just brought to us, in Connecticut, 76.9% of Connecticut voters, Connecticut registered voters, voted in November's election.
That's a pretty good number.
Now, why is that good? Well, it's certainly a lot better than the national average of 62% nationally voted. And Connecticut, our voters in Connecticut believed in their system of voting, our system of voting in Connecticut, and the honesty and integrity of our system, that 76.9% came out and voted, which is a far sight better than 60.
I'd be interested.
Thank you, Michael.
I'd be interested to see if there are any states that could top that number. And which ones are, what state came in as the lowest of the 50?
I'm going to guess that possibly the states that had the highest percentage of voters might be ones that allow voting by mail. It's just a guess.
Why do you think that would be different?
Because it simplifies matters. You don't have to actually physically go and stand in line for any period of time.
Okay, so
you get your card in the mail, you mark it, you sign it, you send it back in. It's got to be there before Election Day, and then they count it in the optical scanner.
Fair enough system. But I put it in the mail on Friday. It has to be in by 2 weeks later to be eligible to be counted.
Yeah.
And somehow my mail-in vote went every which way but to where it should have been, and it gets there a day after it's eligible to be counted.
Or your carrier's name is Newman.
Hello, Newman. I mean,
and it ends up getting tossed in his closet in his apartment.
Has anybody ever experienced a letter or a package that you're expecting or that you've mailed and the other party either doesn't get it, or when they do get it, it's a long time and it's folded and...
Very, very valid point. But I believe in those states, it only has to be postmarked before the election. It can arrive a few days after the election, and they will still count it. I believe if it's a valid ballot.
The accuracy of that, has anybody?
Well, the way that, I mean, Oregon, I think, has what is probably the best voting system in the country, where they actually have drop boxes, locked drop boxes all over where you can go and drop them. So they're not in that
secured
instance,
location.
Correct. They're not getting mailed, because I know here, you can mail a letter from Danbury. It's going to go to New Jersey to get processed.
Yeah.
And then come back to Connecticut.
It still only takes a day.
5 days later.
No, it still only takes a day. I worked in the post office. I know that their machines,
I worked in the post
their
office
optical
too.
character readers are pretty damn quick, and it gets there quick and it gets back quick.
But the thing is, with Oregon, where you can just go and drop, and the only reason I know this is from phone banking for the Sanders campaign for Oregon, was, you need to know what it is, and we would call people, find out who they're voting for, and we would be able to tell them where their closest drop box was, which was really cool. And so folks would just go and drop them. Now, the downside of the mail-in ballot like that is you get it a month before and then you forget about it. It gets tossed on a counter, and I can't tell you how many people we call and spoke.
You mean the person voting?
The person voting gets their mail, tosses it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for reminding us." Right. So in that regard, it was interesting. But having the ability, and the boxes were, not every street corner, but you think of where mailboxes were when we were younger, and you feel like you'd see a mailbox in every
red, white, and
corner.
blue box.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like that. It's easy to be able to
vote. But it's secured, meaning that it's secured to the sidewalk, not inside a secured location.
I believe some of both. Actually, a lot of post offices came up. municipal buildings, of course. So,
Sure.
theoretically, every town's got a town hall that you could go to, easier in a smaller town. But the cities
Meow?
being catcalled again. I'm never going to get tired of saying that. It's horrible. But,
Oh, it's Emily again.
excellent.
What's
she
up?
Says, she says she'll be back. She's going to back. She's going to come back, and this is let's go over some of the folks we have coming up while we're talking. Who do we have scheduled for next week?
Next week, Cora and Rolf from the Green Party, who were here at the end of October, coming back to talk about how their elections went, to talk about how the larger Green Party elections went. I'm sure we'll talk recounts and where the Green Party locally and nationally goes forward. They were good. They were a lot of fun.
Okay. And who do we have coming up in the future?
After that, we have...
Well, the week after that, we're the studio is closed.
Right,
Christmas
correct.
week.
Christmas.
No, the 19th. We have the 19th in there.
Oh, the 19th, right,
Which,
yeah.
which hopefully Deborah Cohen is back safely from North Dakota. She's out at the pipeline camp out in
That's a
out
hike
in
for
Standing
her.
Rock.
She's
She
a-
went from Connecticut out there. This is her second time out there. She's out there with
She's
some
a trooper.
people.
That's
And
one hell of a trip.
she'll have some stories to tell when she comes back. That's
That
for
is
sure.
that is amazing, and hopefully she won't be. Hopefully she'll be dried off from
Frostbitten,
from the
not
water
frost-
and unfrostbitten from those horrible water cannons that have been used on people. Pretty sad state of affairs out there.
I just want to mention.
But what happened today? What did the Justice Department do today?
Because I do want to get back to the voting thing about the national system, because I think it's an interesting topic. But yesterday, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers said that they will not presently be granting the easement for the Dakota Access Pipeline folks to tunnel under the lake, under the river.
Yeah.
Now, they want to do an environmental study, so on and so forth. So it's a small win. I don't know that you would call it a victory, because Energy Transfer Partners, ETP, put out a press release that said this is a political decision by the present administration, and that they are going to drill the pipeline in the
Regardless.
same place regardless.
But they're held up for a period of time, though.
Well, the problem is that the fines for drilling without a permit is something like $50,000 a day. I heard a lower number. When you're talking
mere
about
bag
a
of shell,
$4 billion pipeline,
Yeah.
and they've said in no uncertain terms in a press release, which obviously one is to quell the concerns of the investors, because I guess part of the contracts are based on it being finished. But let's not kid ourselves. They built 1,100 miles of pipeline. I don't see any way, shape, or form that it's not getting completed somehow. And no one in that camp out there is leaving thinking that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers not giving them the easement right now to build the last mile is going to change anything long term. The question becomes, what next? What now? And I think folks are going to say. But the thing that I want to mention, so somewhere between 2,000 and 10,000 U.S. veterans made the trip to Standing Rock.
To stand in front of to protect them.
To protect them. They got out there over the last few days. There is a video that came out today where a group of them approached the elders out there and said, we took an oath to protect the people of this country, and we didn't. We failed you. We took your land. We carved our president's faces into your sacred mountain. We tried to take your language. We took your children. And this group of veterans in front of the elders got down on their, and asked for forgiveness. And it's one of the most amazingly powerful things I have ever watched in my life. And
Very, very spiritual in nature.
I mean, they keep saying they're building a community out there, and that's what they've done. And they got probably 10 to 12,000 people out at that camp right now. It's freezing cold out there. It's been snowing nearly nonstop, and no one's leaving.
No one's leaving, and they're basically providing their own heat. And it would be so great to see not only the rest of the Indian nation reach that point, but the rest of America. We are from immigrant stock. I mean, except for our Native American brothers and sisters. What's it going to take to make it one country?
We are watching
for all.
Yeah, we are watching the rising of what may end up being the great civil rights movement of our age, and
it's very much like the '60s, and where people put their lives on the line, and a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of heads were beaten in. A lot of people were just flat out murdered by Ku Klux Klan members and their enablers. And even though we've got a Ku Klux Klan enabler going into the White House. That's all the more reason for us to get stronger.
How would you deal with the Ku Klux Klan in terms of do they go to church on Sunday and ask for forgiveness for what they've done Monday through Saturday? Do they not think of themselves as from immigrant stock? What is it that empowers them to say that they're the rightful citizens of America, not anybody else? Meanwhile, what are their ethnic backgrounds? What's their composition?
We'll have to reach out to David Duke and the rest of his followers and
figure it out.
That's for somebody to come on and talk about it and figure out what is actually in their heads. From a religious perspective, I mean, there's obviously a schism within the Christian church about this. I mean, you have Christians like myself that are very much on the side of the Standing Rock people, the water protectors, and yet there's another side of Christianity where people like good friend Marty Heiser of the Marty Heiser Show. No exclamation point. No exclamation point. The Marty Heiser Show that certainly are on the other side of the issue, and just a shout out to Marty Heiser. Come on and tell us why you're against protecting the water protectors and protecting the environment and protecting all the spirituality that's there, and how is their spirituality any less valid than the spirituality that we Christians cherish?
So can we ask Marty, what would Jesus do in this case?
Well, I know what Jesus would do. There's no doubt about that. Jesus would be right out there with the water protectors.
Okay.
He would be there, and I challenge Marty to disagree on that one.
There it is, Marty.
Words out.
What's interesting, of course, is,
word to the painter.
Folks have been donating to the water protectors, and the sheriff's department out there put out a call that they were looking for donation of food and certain warm clothes and things as well. So many donations had come in to the camp that they actually brought packages of the things that the sheriff's department was asking for to them.
That's pretty profound.
That's what Jesus would do.
That's what Jesus would do.
Well said.
I guess we have to keep on talking, don't we, for another 10 minutes? It'd be a good time to say,
dramatic
hey, okay.
pause.
And on that note, but go ahead. Who else do we have coming on? I know we've got in January.
Joe Niola might be back.
Joe Niola will be back.
In a couple of weeks.
Got, okay. Speaking of Marty Heiser, I've got a good friend of Marty Heiser, David Straight, scheduled on.
Straight Talk with Dave Straight?
Straight Talk with Dave Straight. And he's scheduled on January 30th. And he's coming on to talk about the Deer Alliance is a group he belongs to. And it's a group that believes that in order to keep the deer population down, you have to cull the herd. And since there are no natural predators anymore, because we've killed them all, then the only answer to that, to keeping the deer herd numbers down, is to have, I would go with the bow and arrow folks in Brookfield first, because they're up in the trees and they're banged through the neck, deer dead, meat cut up and sent to the soup kitchens. But there's also hunters that use shotguns and guns to cull the deer population. Dave's going to come on and talk about, Dave Straight's going to come on and talk about.
Those are the brave guys.
All those things, all those aspects of deer population control. And I invited him on because for what it's worth, I'm inclined to agree with him that you have to keep the deer population down to keep deers en masse from suffering the horrible effects of starvation.
Plus, they are carriers of the
ticks. Yeah. That's it. But that doesn't call. That's not. I don't think that's the biggest issue. Ticks they carry, which could infect us, doesn't bother me nearly as much as the thought of deer starving.
Well, you wouldn't say that if you knew individuals who've been bitten by tick and gotten Lyme disease, which then in turn becomes other physical issues.
Okay.
Like fibromyalgia is one of the. I personally know someone who's had that experience.
Okay.
So.
Well, I haven't, so I'll have to extend myself out emotionally and empathetically, and I'll agree on that. Okay. But I still think that the starvation of the deer population, which is bound to happen, and it's happened periodically when they run short of food in the wintertime, I'm still going to put that at the notch higher. But at any rate, so that's who we have on January 30th. January 23rd, I'll have to look at my phone. We've got, no, hold on. Keep talking. I'm gonna.
Okay, so voting,
Yes.
Why we don't have a national system. I agree with you that it should. But we were talking before the show about the idea that if we give one organization control over the 50 states, do we wind up with more of an issue than 50 states having 50 shades of voting gray?
Yeah. But I mean, realistically, there's no way at this point in, where are we, 2016 going on 17, that a coordinated state government in New York couldn't coordinate with Pennsylvania, with Ohio. It wouldn't take that much for a computer person or someone to say this, introduce an idea, work out the kinks. Eventually, someone would have to come up with the plan that everybody can say, you're right, that system will work, it's foolproof, and let's try it in certain areas to see how accurate it can be. But if we're going to fight about it and say, no, New York's not giving up that authority, and then we'll never get to that point.
Maybe part of the reason they don't want standardization in that way is because then it can't be manipulated. I mean, I guess if you look at it from all the different angles and think, it comes down to that simple logic, right? That you think, well, this is obvious.
Yeah, well.
And then you start getting distant from all of the places of, well, what are the nefarious reasons that would stop it? I mean, they can throw it, it wouldn't be able to be secure. Well, you're telling us now that this one wasn't secure anyway.
Right, so you got to fix this one. How are you going to fix it?
Oh, it'll cost too much money to give every precinct in the country the same stuff.
Or are they saying they don't want everyone to be able to vote? They want to, sorry, you couldn't make it to that box to drop in. Oh, you didn't get your ballot in the mail. Oh, it's too late. Oh,
you didn't know in California that when you got one ballot, you had to get a second ballot if you wanted to vote in the Democratic primary because, in California, the ballots were sent out, but if you wanted to vote in the Democratic primary between Secretary Clinton and our beloved Bernie Sanders, you had to get a second ballot. You couldn't even use the same ballot that was mailed to you.
Was that in part of the fine print that I missed?
But it wasn't the fine print. But you know why you had to get a second ballot? Because the Democrats wanted it that way. The Republicans don't have those shenanigans in their primary.
Shenanigans again.
It's such a great word. That's why I could just sit here for half an hour.
You're welcome.
Shenanigans. I was whispering shenanigans into the microphone.
I thought you were going to say shillelagh.
Shenanigans. Shillelagh.
Don't shake your shenanigans at me.
But the Democrats made it difficult to be able to vote in the Democratic primary in California. They wanted to open up. There was a lawsuit a few years ago. They wanted to open up the Democratic primary for presidency, and it was the Democratic Party who took them to court to get it closed, as opposed to it being an open primary. The Democrats, who were supposed to be for
the people.
Democratic.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
We've learned. We've learned.
Okay. January 23rd. We have
Super Bowl. No.
January 23rd, which might be the day after the Super Bowl, possibly, or the 6 days before. January 23rd, we have Raheb Ali Brennan coming back. Now, Raheb was the candidate for the 2nd Connecticut Congressional District, 2nd House District in Connecticut. Wasn't successful. He and Mike Duff had a close election and a very, in my mind's eye, two very decent candidates. Raheb Ali Brennan did not win. And yet, going out there and donating a lot of his long, hot summer hours, walking door to door, engaging in conversation with people, meeting a lot of great people, was, in his mind's eye, a pretty fun experience, even though he did not win. Why is he coming on the 23rd? We're going to be trying to motivate other candidates, young candidates, less young candidates like myself.
The gray hairs?
Yeah. To actually run for office.
That's what we need.
Because we need to have more people running for office. And
fresh blood.
And we want other candidates to come on and talk about their experiences, even if they weren't on the winning end. David Stevenson, Roberto Perez, Mark Murash, and Emily's still on the phone, I think. But thanks for joining us. Progressive Soup, we'll see you next Wednesday, 9:30.
We're going to start working on that national voting system.
Okay.
We got things to do.
We got things to do.
Come join us working on that.
Bernie, can you come and help us?
I got a bowl.